Welcome to Transition Class. My name is Tonya Anderson Morgan, and I am the bariatric dietitian here at LifeBridge Health. So we're going to recap on the diet progression from after surgery. Stage in the process is your juice party, which is the first 3 days. Days 1 is your first full day home, and then we have for the next 2 days thereafter, we're only focusing on juice cocktails. So the main thing to remember is that fluid is always the priority here on out. You get to enjoy a juice cocktail, a clear juice cocktail more specifically, with a minimum of 48 ounces for the day. Now, this juice cocktail has quite an easy recipe. We're simply going to mix half water and half 100% juice. This juice needs to be clear. So, any clear juice that you enjoy, whether that may be apple, cranberry, or grape juice, you are welcome to even mix two different juices as long as half of the mixture is water and the other half is that 100% juice. It is important to note that at this time, we are no longer going to use straws. We're going to avoid any type of carbonated beverages, which are your fizzy, gas-like, soda-like beverages. No gum for a minimum of 6 months. Caffeine, we will avoid until we are in such a routine that we are absolutely sure we're getting a minimum of 64 ounces of fluid on a regular basis. That way, you can enjoy your caffeine early in the day. It can be cleared from your system within 5 hours, and you can still enjoy a great sleep at night. When you have your juice cocktail, just like your regular fluids, you may want to make a jug of it with the total amount that you need for the day. This way, you're certain when you have completed the entire 48 ounces. You might want to keep this mixture in the fridge or maybe on the counter, or you might want to divide it half and half in the fridge, half on the counter, because we're not going to have anything that's too cold or anything that's too hot. We want it room temperature or warm to the touch. After you've consumed your minimum of 48 ounces of clear juice cocktail, you can enjoy more fluids once you're able to do so from your list of favorite low-calorie drinks. That means they have up to 10 calories per serving. The next stage in your process is your protein powwow, days 4 through 14. This is where the juice party ends. So we're going to stop the fluids, the fruit cocktail all together. So we're going to stop that abruptly. It is done, and now we start our protein powwow. So this protein powwow is going to be made of shakes. You're going to have pre-made protein shakes that you're going to make with protein powder. You can also have some ready-made protein shakes, but we prefer that you use protein powders because you are able to have more of the protein powder in less liquid to ensure that you are getting enough in one sitting. So when you're buying your protein powders, you want to make sure that protein is primarily sourced from whey protein isolate. That whey protein isolate is virtually lactose free. So even if you are lactose intolerant, it's very likely you can have this without issue. Now, if you're extremely lactose sensitive, you may or may not have a reaction, but you would have known that by this time. So be sure not to reintroduce or introduce things that are brand new to you at this point. Your protein shakes, you would have tried that already at some point in the pre-op process. So we're not having more than 8 ounces in one sitting of a protein shake. When we make it, we're going to have at least 6 to 8 ounces, which means you may have 5 or 6 ounces of fluid, and by the time you add your protein powder, it's going to elevate to that 6 to 8 ounce window. Now you're still going to have your fluids. Why? Because fluids are always the priority. So we're going to be interchanging between fluids and protein shakes throughout the day. However, your protein shakes count as meals. They do not count as fluid. Therefore, we're still going to separate them from your fluids by a minimum of 30 minutes. Make sure and check yourself halfway through the day. You just want to do a little self assessment. Hey, I'm halfway through my day. It's been 8 to 10 hours. How far have I met my protein goal or fluid goals for the day? So you can have a bit of a gauge on knowing whether you need to pick up the pace or to make something that's much more concentrated with the protein so that you can get it down more easily. Now, what about if you're not tolerating your protein shakes pretty well? Well, if you're not tolerating it, that means it's not staying down. So you're feeling nauseated, you're throwing up a little bit, or it just you feel upset or some sort of GI distress. Well, you can switch it up. For some people, you can try a Lactaid for a milk replacement. You can try a lactase pill if you are a person with lactose intolerance, or you can switch the type of protein powder or protein brand that you're using. So it's always good not to rely on one brand and one flavor for your protein options. You want to have a couple things available. Other options, we have your protein water. So protein water is going to be a lot more tolerable than your protein shakes. So if you're feeling any type of discomfort, I would suggest leaning on the water a little more than you lean on the shake. But at the end of the day, try your best to meet your protein goals. Keep in mind that if you have protein water, half of that volume counts toward the fluid and then half all of your protein counts toward the shake. You can also do unflavored protein powder and mix it into things for variety at this point. So you can still enjoy maybe not so much different textures, but different flavors, um, just different tastes. You don't get too bored with things. Take a moment to observe all the foods listed here and note that this is not an exhaustive list, meaning this is just an easy list of things that you can find in your conventional grocery stores more frequently than other items. So once you've done your first 2 weeks, congratulations, we can progress into the pureed foods or your soft foods diet. And we're going to do that for about 2 more weeks. So now we can have some meat, some eggs, some yogurt and cheese, even some chili with different kinds of beans. You can have a lot more options opened up to you. This list make it easier for you to figure out what you can eat, and all of these things are predominantly protein based. So at this point, we should not be seeing potatoes or oatmeal or fruits because those things are not protein based. So just think of foods with a lot of protein in them for the most part, and we can still add some condiments to it. But this is what we're focusing on this point. And if you're unsure about a certain food that's not on this list, there's another list in your binder with protein foods, and you can ask Google, hey, is this a high protein food? Transitioning into these soft foods. So how do we go about switching this up? So when we started the juice party, we did that for 3 days and we stopped abruptly and we immediately dive into the protein powwow. However, from the protein powwow to your soft foods, we can switch it up a little bit. We have the flexibility to mix and match your soft food dishes and your protein shakes. So, based on how you're feeling, listen to yourself and try to test the waters little at a time. Maybe instead of doing all of your meals to be soft on the first day, maybe try one meal, see how that goes. If that went well, try a second meal. Now, with these meals, you may have two different things on them if you just wanted to pair up something, but it's strongly suggested that you try one new item at a time. We're messing with the stomach, and you know the stomach doesn't really like that. So you want to be like, hey, Tum Tum, you good with this? You put some in your tum tum. Tum tum says yes, no drama. Okay, it's on the list of acceptable items. If you've had something and tum tum was like, we ain't having that, maybe you want to listen and be like, okay, tum tum is not good with that. So we're going to put that on pause and maybe revisit in a week or two, maybe three. Okay, so that's how we kind of go about listening to our body and seeing what's tolerable. So any of these protein foods, unless it's already mushy, like the cottage cheese, for example, it's pretty mushy and damp, we don't need to add any more condiments to that. But something like a chicken breast or some ground beef, we might need to add some more condiments to that because the idea is we want it to be really soft and mushy and we can easily swallow it without issue. And it's a smooth slide down the back of the throat into your stomach with no drama. You don't want to feel like a bug going down your throat. Okay. Also important to make sure that you're looking at the time when you begin to eat so you can time yourself and know that after 30 minutes, that is the time to stop. And maybe you hadn't finished what you set out, but it's okay because there are other things going on in the body and these things just take time to level out. So let's not rush it while we're taking our little bites and then we're waiting 2 to 3 minutes in between. We have a small amount of food. So usually, if you're sticking to the quarter cup, 1 or 2 or 3 tablespoons at a time in a sitting of food, that is perfectly fine. The main thing here to focus on is only proteins at this stage. You make your mini meals, make sure that you have an idea of how many grams of protein that particular meal has. So, for example, if you're making egg salad and you probably put some cottage cheese in there, and your egg salad, say you use 3 whole eggs and maybe a half cup of cottage cheese, approximately that entire thing might be about 20 or 25 grams of protein. Let's say, for example, 25 grams by the time you made that dish. And you're not going to have that entire dish altogether because it might add up to just over a cup when you put everything else in there. You may have maybe a third of that. But if you have the total recipe for your dish and it's 25 grams, well, let's see how many portions of this can I have where each one is a decent meal. So if it went a little bit over a cup and we're having like a quarter of a cup, in each sitting, then you're probably going to get 4 servings out of this meal. So if you get 4 servings out of there, that's 25 divided by 4. That's just over 6 grams of protein. And that's how you kind of have an idea of how many grams of protein in what you're eating. So maybe if you're able to have that quarter cup within the 30 minutes and the volume of it is fairly light, maybe you can have a tiny bit more. But for now, let's keep things gentle and slow. And you're going to have more protein shakes or other things in a day to make up for the total amount of protein that you have in the day. Okay, so just don't force it. Just keep track of those numbers as you go through the day. Now, most people have no GI drama when they stay within the guidelines. And I say most people because some people, even when you stay within the guidelines, maybe a little hiccup pops about. And this could be for many reasons, but as long as you stay within the guidelines, you are minimizing your chances for GI drama. So this is like a troubleshooting page when you don't feel so great, when you're eating your food or after you've eaten your food, just some things you can assess yourself, ask yourself these questions. And if you get a yes in any of them, then it's likely you can make that adjustment to resolve your symptoms. So, are you eating too large of bites? And it's that a yes, then, well, we need to reduce the bites and use smaller utensils. How quickly are we eating? So, you might want to slow down. We're supposed to be taking 2 or 3 minutes to chew and swallow foods from the time we put it in our mouth and the time to swallow it. That should be like a 2 minute process right there. And then in between each bite, once your mouth is cleared, we're still waiting another 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. What about the portions? Well, we talked about the serving size just now to have in one sitting, whether it's a solid dish or it is a protein shake. Some persons may want to experiment and try to finish half cup of something solid, and that might not be a problem in the moment. But maybe a half an hour later, you just start really feeling a little nauseated if you start moving around. So let's check those portions and keep them within the guidelines. And then, are you eating past a sense of fullness? Some people do this because they may be in a hurry. They may be thinking, oh, I got to get to work. Let me just finish this up. I got to get the kids to school. Other things are usually influencing our eating behaviors. And this is because we are responsible adults. So we want to try to get everything done. However, during this process, it's really important that we take the time to pay close attention to how we eat, what we eat, when we eat. These things are going to be really important. And the closer we pay attention, it's the easier our life is going to be for this entire process. Through all of the questions and troubleshoot as need be. You can correct there. If you're having significant pain or physiological, something physical, you're throwing up, nothing's staying down, you feel terrible, you have chills, you have strong headaches, or if you really feel a mess, you really feel bad, please call the office. Please, please do not wait. Don't let this go on for 2 and 3 days. Just call us. If there's something we can do, we will do what we can to get you better. Hypothetically speaking, say you've been feeling not so great and your situation is not improving because you've done the questions, you've adjusted where you can, you've probably emailed your dietitian, you've referenced um, your binder with information, and you just still can't seem to make some significant improvements in your intake of fluids and protein. What do you do? Well, until you can speak with Rebecca, probably, or the nurse practitioner, you want to make sure it's going to be tough. If you're already nauseated and you're already throwing up, it's going to be hard to get fluid in. We understand that completely. However, you might want to sip on it. So if you're at such a state where it's hard to just get back on track, in the meantime, especially that policies regarding your visit into the clinic may change based on guidelines with COVID surges, so be mindful of that. But in the meantime, you will really try to get back to your 50-50 clear juice cocktail. That's half water, half juice. If this is only if you're really not getting things down, you're really struggling, this is what you would resort to. And you can get as much as possible. Now, if you're really ill, you're not getting in 48 ounces of this. But if you can get in 3 or 4 cups across the day until better can be done, that's going to be helpful to you, okay? Okay, so when things are great, we can progress the diet. From the first month, we're now progressing into chopped foods. So the foods are still going to be fairly soft, but they don't need to be as mushy as cottage cheese and applesauce. They can be a little more wholesome and you can have a little more variety. So let's look at this diet for the next 2 months. We can enjoy chopped meats. So chopped will be if you have a fruit processor that has different settings on it that you can just chop things, but the size we're looking at is the size of a corn kernel or the size of a pea. So that's the pieces you want to cut up your meat into unless it's a paste. If it's a paste, such as with a tuna salad, then that's okay. But if you don't want to do a paste, I'm not sure if you want to do like a pork chop paste, you might just want to take your knife and fork and dice it up into pieces that are similar to like the peas and carrots, that type of pea mixture. That's the size we're looking at. So we can definitely have some more meat on there, some fish, some of these things we've been having already, and now we can add things to the diet. We can now have some cooked vegetables. Now, your vegetables could be canned or frozen or fresh. I strongly suggest you start with canned first. Why? Because it's already processed in such a way, and process is not a bad word. It is processed in such a way that it is softened already for you. So, however it comes in a can, you can take your fork and mush it quite easily. So, a peas and carrots straight out of the can, corn out of the can. The corn could be a hit or miss type of thing, so be careful with that one. But things that are higher protein, your red beans, white beans, black beans, pigeon beans, peas, garbanzo beans, or chickpeas. All of those are nice and ready to eat with a fork if you can squish it up. Okay, you're going to avoid any type of fresh vegetables. This is why we say only cooked. These vegetables, though, are going to have no skins, no seeds, and the woody structure we're talking about, as in the stalk of broccoli and cauliflower and asparagus, or even Brussels sprouts. You want to avoid those cruciferous vegetables for now, even if you were to cook it mushy. Now, eventually, nearing the end, if you take the florets only of the broccoli heads, just the florets, just the green little dots to the top, and you can cook that mushy, that'll be okay, but not the stalks, okay? Guess what? We can now have some fruit, but it must be canned fruit. So no fresh fruit whatsoever. It must be canned, and you must drain the liquid, even if it's sitting in its own juices. During this time, we are not drinking juices. If things are going well, that's a backup for when things aren't going so well. But we're not having juices by itself. All of our fluids would be our regular 0 to 10 calorie fluids and water. That is what we drink, or your protein shakes. The volume of food that you can have in one sitting, we talked about having up to a quarter of a cup, and of course, based on your size, it may be a little tiny bit over that quarter cup, maybe a half cup, especially if you're a male, 5'10" or above, you're a taller person, bigger boned, and all of that. You might have a little more than a petite female that's probably 5 foot. Okay, so during this time, anywhere from a quarter to 3/4 of a cup is where your meals are going to be, and it's going to be less than a fistful. When you come out of this period, now you can have a fistful of food. We're going to continue separating our food and drink by a minimum of 30 minutes. For those of you who has had any type of GI distress, by that I mean you had vomiting, diarrhea, you probably had diagnoses of irritable bowel syndrome or IBS or any type of irregularities of your GI tract, you might want to wait a little bit longer than 30 minutes and just see how your body responds. If TomTom is okay with it, then we're good to go. So let's make sure and check it with TomTom a little bit at a time. TomTom is your tummy. Okay, your fluids, that does not change. We are getting in our meals, but we're still going to get our 48 to 64 ounces of fluids. And for those taller persons who have become very active in the gym, you are welcome to have more water. Okay, maintain those protein goals. So at this point, you're adding new foods, you're still calculating when I eat X plus Y plus Z. For example, if I have 2 tablespoons of tuna salad plus a tablespoon of green beans plus a tablespoon of carrots, and these things are canned, how much protein do I have on the plate? You want to have an idea of what that is so you can keep track of your protein and you know when you meet your protein goals. But of course, at this point, I would have helped you through the process and make sure that you are good and cleared to move on to the next stage. Now that you are cleared from your first 3 months of your diet, you can now proceed to returning to the Nutrition for Life guidelines. So you've been doing this leading up to the surgery, and now you get to go back to those guidelines, see them below. You already know them. We're eating our protein first. We can enjoy more foods. The restrictions are pretty much lifted, except the no carbonation, no straws, not too much caffeine. That still stands. No gulping. Your separating of fluids and food. Those things will stand forever. But in terms of your diet variety, now you have a lot more wiggle room. When last have you had a protein bar? So you can have your protein bars once again, and we're going to pay attention to those protein bar guidelines, which you're going to come up to in a moment. You can have untoasted bread because before you can have a little piece, but it needed to be toasted. You might have rice or pasta. So it's not like you can't have these starchy foods in your life. Of course you can, but moderation is everything. So make sure to measure them out in terms of quarter, half cups, or 2 or 3 tablespoons at a time. And that'll be a good serving because we need to make sure we have enough room for your proteins first. You can have vegetables with the thick skins. You can have cooked vegetables and raw ones that are not juicy. So raw vegetables that are not juicy, like say spinach, for example, you can have that plain if you wanted to, but of course there's some things you will want to cook. You can have your steak, different types of meat. You just don't want to be, you want to cook them through. You want to cook them through just for safety, and it's also better for digestion if it's cooked all the way through. And you can have your pomegranates once again, sprinkle with your salad. Once you've found the products that work for you, that you enjoy, by this time you already know how many grams of protein are in a serving of X, Y, and Z. So be sure to always read your labels with every single thing that you buy. You're paying attention to protein, sugars, the carb, yes, but more than likely you want to make sure, hey, if it's a starchy food, how much protein am I getting in there? Okay, be sure to check out your serving sizes as well. Your protein cheat sheet. What if you don't have a label? What do you do? Well, we estimate like everything else. The goal is not for you to memorize an encyclopedia of food products and to read every single thing else we're in distress. Not at all. We want to get to a point where we're comfortable enough to make simple estimates, okay? So if you have approximately 1 ounce of meat, the palm of your hand is approximately 4 or 5 ounces worth. A deck of cards is about 3 ounces, and most deck of cards can fit within the palm of our hands. So that'll be a good starting point. Also, in your binder, there is a sheet on using hand measurements like a fistful, tablespoon to mean the tip of your thumb, and etc. And if you want to use measuring cups until you get a good handle of what this food looks like when it's spread out on a plate, that is also an excellent idea. You could pick up a ring of measuring cups at Dollar Tree. Very affordable. It's a good investment. Okay, and then eventually you're going to know off the top of your hand just by eyeballing it. I had about a quarter cup of tuna, maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons of meat, about a half cup of egg salad, and maybe 2 ounces of lentils, something like that. You should be able to articulate that quite easily by month 3. And this is your slide for your protein bar guidelines. Would you find a bar that's perfectly within all of this all of the time? Maybe not. We do have a list of them in your binder, so always review your binder for more resources. You wouldn't know unless you read through it. However, you may sometimes find something that you really like and maybe it's outside one of the ranges. Well, in that case, you want to look at the whole picture. So, for example, if you found a bar that has 255 calories, oh my gosh, does that make it evil? No, it does not. You can still enjoy that bar. 5 to 10 calories up is no big deal. If the fat is up by 1, it's no big deal. But this is the guideline. Would you regularly enjoy foods that are outside of the guidelines? Absolutely not. So this is most of the time, and once in a blue moon, you can step outside a little bit, just like any other treat. You want to pay attention to your sugar. You want to pay attention to your protein. Would you have a bar that only has 5 grams of protein? No, because that's a third less. Well, you may have it, and then you might pair it with a protein shake, for example, if that falls within your needs and that's a meal for you, and that's okay. So the next thing is, are you using the bar by itself as a meal? Or this is for the most part, if you're using it by itself. If you're pairing it with something else, then this can be adjusted. So the adjustment will be in the protein part. If the protein's fairly low, then maybe you pair it with half or a whole protein shake or maybe protein water. The adjustment can be in not the added sugar, because we definitely want to stay on the low end of that always. And then, well, the calories. If you're going to pair it with something else, that means that something else also has calories. So you don't want to have high calories, higher than this, and plus pair it with something else. So it'll pretty much be in the protein. That'll be our main compromise here. Just to reinforce, gum, carbonated beverages, straws are not permitted. So these are the things we're going to not do anymore. No more drinking and eating together. You've already been doing it, and we're going to keep those going. These things are forever. Keep in mind that the closer you stay to the guidelines, the more successful you are in terms of avoiding any GI drama. You don't want to upset Mr. Tum Tum. Okay. And of course, your vitamins, that caffeine does interact and limit the absorption of some of your vitamins. So just make sure you take it at least an hour apart from your food. Well, the vitamin and the caffeinated item, at least an hour apart. At this point, you've probably heard this from me at least 10 times. Vitamins are forever and ever and ever. They do not stop ever. Okay, so you should not be going 2, 3, 4, 5 months. You fall off track with your follow ups and you haven't had vitamins, or you ran out one time and your favorite option is out of stock or in back order. Nope, those are not options at all. If you're ordering month to month, unless you have a standing order and you want to maybe switch it up a little bit, halfway through your supply, you're already making that order for the next one. You want to have a backup location in the event you know that your shipment is not coming in. We've seen this year that global events can affect you accessing the products that you need on time. So let's make sure we are well prepared by knowing where to find our vitamins just in case we don't get that standing order in time, or we just have a backup. So we order maybe 2 months ahead or 1 month ahead. So when the current one is done, you already have that month backup. You're always going to have a multivitamin, you're always going to have a calcium citrate. Everything else is dependent on if you specifically need extra. But for the most part, for many people, the minimums are met within um, one of these capsules, either the multivitamin or the calcium citrate. Pay attention over here. No gummies. It doesn't matter who is getting paid to sponsor it on social media. No TikTok gummies, no IG gummies, no Facebook gummies. No gummies forever and ever and ever. You can switch to small capsules at 3 months if you're a sleeve patient and 6 months as a bypass patient. But you will still take a capsulated multivitamin or calcium citrate. You are welcome to enjoy your bariatric brands. As long as you enjoy them, that's perfectly fine, but gummies will not be part of the equation. Patches are right now not well researched, is very new, and I would like you to not take a chance, something that we just don't know enough about just yet. It may be something that might be possible in the future, but until we know more, please stick to the recommended version. Some of us may have challenges, some of us may not, but for those who do, gas seems to be at the top of the list for those who may experience some discomfort. Now, this is quite normal. You may have recalled that Dr. Lee or the pre-op nurse, Shamika, or maybe someone else might have explained to you at some point that carbon dioxide is used in your surgery so that it can be done with ease. You might have some carbon dioxide just hanging around your stomach even after the surgery. So it'll take a little time to come out. And then, even after that release has taken place, you might just have gas as you go through the diet progressions because you're making all of these changes to your diet in a relatively short time. So this is very normal, not to be alarmed, and there are over-the-counter treatments like Gas-X, Milocon that you can take unless you're in a really, really bad pain. This should do just fine, and if you feel like it's a really strong pain, of course, you want to call the main desk and likely speak with the nurse practitioner, Rebecca. Constipation is part of the process, especially in that first month post-op. Why? Because your stool is made of solids, and if you're only drinking in that first 2 weeks after surgery, you don't have enough solids left over from all those drinks to make up adequate stool like you used to before surgery. So your GI tract is going through a lot of changes, and don't be too alarmed. This is perfectly normal. As you eat more food and progress through the diet stages, you'll be able to build that bulk and have a new routine for your bowel movements. So you'll have more fiber, which is also going to help. You just want to be able to have a bowel movement every 3 days, maybe 4 days. And you don't want to be spending 3 and 4 hours on the tank. You should be able to have a movement, you feel the sensation, you gotta go and you let it out. And if you need an extra 10 or 15 minutes, okay, but we shouldn't be spending a day shift or a night shift on the tank. If after your first week you feel like 4 or 5 days you haven't had a movement, then you can immediately on your own, you don't need our clearance for this, you can try these over-the-counter remedies like Miralax, Colace, and Ducalax. Try the daily recommended dosage to start and see if you get a movement within that day or the next day. And if no, you can take it up a little bit. So for Miralax, you can have 1 or 2 servings a day, and that's safe. That's okay. Colate, same thing. You can have 1 or 2 servings a day and see if you have some changes there. Now, if you feel like a week has gone by into 10 days or even a week and you haven't had a movement, or you feel impacted, where you feel like something's there, you can get it out, please call the office and we can see if we can get something a little stronger for you and see what else is going on. But feel free to explore these remedies and you can mix them. You can have 1 dose of Miralax, 1 dose of Colace. That's okay. You can definitely do that. And then, of course, positioning would just kind of help make things a little smoother to come out. You don't need to buy this item down here, but you can just elevate your feet with some other device or chair or stool or box or anything to lift your feet. Are you ready for taste changes? Well, you may not have to be. They are quite common, but it doesn't happen to everyone. So don't assume that you're gonna definitely get it. It depends. Everyone's very different, and if you do experience it, it may come, it may go, it may come right back and go again. So don't get too attached. Your hormones are all over the place. You're losing weight, you change your diet, all sorts of things are going on, and this is just responses, right? Because we're messing with the body. So oftentimes, if while you're going through your diet progression, you've had something that you usually like, and you just kind of recognize, wait a minute, this yogurt tastes disgusting, and this is your favorite one, you would know, especially if it's something that's a manufactured product, where the standard of the taste or the standards of production are fairly the same all the time, you would recognize, wait a minute, this don't take like it used to. And that's your cue right there. Oops, maybe we're getting some taste changes. So just put it aside for a week or 2 or 3 or 4. You can try again within 2 or 3 weeks, see how it goes. If Tum Tum says no, then it's a no. We put it back, we bring it out another time. So again, that's listening to your body and working with the feedback that you've gotten. Just give it time. That's all you need here, and it'll be all right. Are you getting enough vitamins? Well, you have been thoroughly equipped at this point to know what you need and how much you need. So, you are more than welcome to cross-check your vitamin worksheet, your daily vitamin and mineral needs sheet with the items that you bought or before you buy it, preferably to ensure that you are getting enough. And if there's any doubts at all, you are welcome to email the dietitian always. And you're not doing this the day after surgery. You're doing this well in advance so you are prepared, okay? feel free to send a photo of the back and front of the vitamins that you have questions about. And please don't send photos alone with no context or no information in the email. Please include in your email who you are, name as it appears in the chart, your date of birth, because you may be someone who needs additional vitamins somewhere. And we want to make sure that we can provide you with an educated response. You want to open your chart, see what's going on with you, where you are in the process, and what you actually need, especially if you had labs done and there may be a need for adjusting your vitamin regimen. Always, always include your full name as it appears in the chart, your date of birth, and your specific questions to the dietitian email, bariatricdietitian@lifebridgehealth.org. And these are just glimpses of that daily vitamin and mineral worksheet that you're going to use to ensure that you have enough. So the main thing you want to look for, I would say, can be a deciding factor because some vitamins have enough and some don't, would be your thiamine. So right here, your thiamine, it's going to be only in your multivitamin. You want to make sure you're getting 12 grams for the day. So when you buy a product, the product may say 6 milligrams of thiamine. That's okay because you may need to take 2 of those per day. Sometimes you get one that says 4 or 5, then maybe that one you take 3 times a day and so on. But this tends to be low in lots of them. So low will be anything less than 4. So with less than 4 and you got to take it more than 4 times a day, it's not really worth getting that brand or that particular type of multivitamin. So you might want to switch to one that has a minimum of 4, but most of them have either 5 or 6. Some of them even have 12. So that way you only take 1 or 2 a day. And then, of course, your calcium citrate usually comes in either 5 or 600 milligrams, but there are a few that have numbers in between this. So at the end of the day, you make sure you get somewhere between 1200 and 15 milligrams. Your vitamin D, B12, and iron is usually included in some multivitamins. We do advise for your first month, try to get a multivitamin without iron, as the iron tends to not taste that great in your multivitamin sometimes, and then also it can add to constipation. So you already might have a little bit of challenge there, and this might just add to that. So we want to keep it separate until at least 1 month post-op where you're eating whole foods again and constipation is less of an issue. Be sure you're getting ferrous gluconate or ferrous fumarate iron always. You will find this on the label like every other supplement. So you really, really want to watch closely. While other forms of iron are available, they are not as accessible to you, meaning you may not all of it is not biologically available to you. So you may not absorb and use all of it. So be sure that we're getting these 2 versions of there. Just like your calcium, you have calcium citrate. The others can cause issues as a bariatric patient. All right, so you're enjoying your new life at this point. You're back to the Nutrition for Life guidelines, and maybe you've gotten kind of bored with some of the mainstay conventional dishes and you want to try something else. Well, you can check out these websites, bariatriceating.com, bariatricfoodie.com, and you know what? There are tons more. So almost any website where you see bariatric guidelines or bariatric ideas, when it comes to meal ideas, that is perfectly okay. When it comes to your clinical individual direction of vitamins and what you need to be doing as far as your diet progression, you want to make sure you're getting that information only from our clinic. But you're welcome to get a new food idea from other people, other websites, other influencers. That is perfectly okay. Don't forget our support group on Facebook. You can simply request Rebecca or myself as a friend. See how Rebecca's name is spelled, space NP or Tornia, space RD. Friend request us, we will accept and add you to the unlisted private group called Strive to Succeed. And from there, you are welcome to interact with all other patients that's on there with general questions, ideas, find accountability buddies, and just see how the group is going. Um, you also have the option to join the Windstream support group, where you have the opportunity to meet patients online and talk to them in real time. That link is available to you in your welcome email that you would have gotten when you started the program. So be sure to join that. Remember that your follow-up visits with a dietitian, only your initial follow-up was scheduled by the pre-op nurse, but your 3-month visits and those to follow, you must schedule yourself. You will be seeing the nurse practitioner, Rebecca, for a lot more frequently than you would the dietitian at this point, because after your 3 months, it'll be annually for the dietitian, and then you have a lab schedule. If you do not have a binder at this point, please ask the main clinic, call the front desk, stop by the clinic, let them know you did not get a binder, because it's going to be very vital that you have all of this information printed and in a safe place so you can easily reference when you just need to get back on track. Okay, so you have your schedule with your labs. You can follow that and you can just call to check if things have changed. And thank you for viewing. Thank you for being a part of our program. We appreciate you and we wish you success. We are here to support you in any way that we can. Have a great day.